Tonight's topic is the first of two parts of an article taken from Root Rot. It was reprinted from the Century magazine, April 1890. The title is The Slave Trade in the Congo Basin, and as you listen to this, just imagine that you are one of a black audience who thinks that these poor black ancestors were really done a bad thing by being brought over here as slaves. It's by one of Stanley's pioneer officers, illustrated after sketches from life by the author. The heart of Africa is being rapidly depopulated in consequence of the enormous death row caused by the barbarous slave trade. It is not merely the bondage which slavery implies that should appeal to the sympathies of the civilized world. It is the bloodshed, cruelty, and misery which it involves. During my residence in Central Africa, I was repeatedly traveling about in the villages along the Congo River and its almost unknown affluents, and in every new village I was confronted by fresh evidences of the horrible nature of this evil. I did not seek to witness the sufferings attendant upon this traffic in humanity, but cruelties of all kinds are so general that the mere passing visits which I paid brought me in constant contact with them. It is not alone by the Arabs that slave raiding is carried on throughout Central Africa. With respect to slavery in the Congo Free State, the western limit of the slave raiding operations of the Arabs is the Aruwimi River, just below Stanley Falls. But intertribal slavery exists from this point throughout the state to the Atlantic Ocean. During my 6 years' residence in the Congo River, I saw but little of the Arabs, and therefore in this article I am detailing only my experiences bearing upon the subject of slavery among the natives themselves. I first went to the Congo in 1883 and traveled without delay into the interior. Arriving at Stanley Pool, I received orders from my chief, Mr. Henry M. Stanley, to accompany him upriver on his little boat, the En Avant. Stanley at that time was engaged in establishing a few posts at important and strategic points along the upper river. Lukolila, 800 miles in the interior, was once decided upon, and I had the honor of being selected by him as chief of this post. As no white man had ever lived there before, I had a great deal of work in establishing myself. The position selected for our settlement was a dense forest, and until now it had been more familiar with the trumpeting of elephants and the cry of the leopard than with human beings. At first, the natives rather objected to my remaining at all and stated their objections to Stanley. Said they, "We have promised to allow you to put a white man here, but we have been talking the matter over, and we have concluded it would be better to put your white man somewhere else. We, the assembled chiefs, have held a council and have come to the conclusion that it is not desirable to have such a terrible creature in the district." Stanley said, "Why, what is there in him that you object to? You have never seen him." I had not yet landed, being at that time very sick and unable to leave the boat. They said, "No, we have not seen him, but we have heard about him." Stanley then said, "What have you heard about him?" They replied, "He is half a lion and half a buffalo, has one eye in the middle of his forehead, and is armed with sharp, jagged teeth, and is continually slaughtering and devouring human beings. Is this so?" Stanley answered them, "I did not know that he was such a terrible creature, but I will call him and let you judge for yourselves." Upon my appearing, this illusion was immediately dispelled, as after suffering several days from an acute sickness, I really did not look very formidable or bloodthirsty. Here I lived for 20 months, the only white man, so that I had every opportunity of studying native character and customs. In order to place before the reader a picture of savage life untouched by civilization, I could hardly do better than lightly sketch a typical village at Lukolila as I have intimately known it. The whole district contains about 3,000 people, the land occupied by them extending along the bank for 2 miles, the villages being dotted through this distance in clusters of 50 or 60 houses. The houses are built on each side of one long street or in open squares. They are roofed with either palm leaves or grass, the walls being composed of split bamboo. Some of these dwellings contain 2 or 3 compartments with only one entrance, while others are long structures divided up into 10 or 12 rooms, each with its own entrance from the outside. At the back of these dwellings are large plantations of banana trees, while above them tower the stately palm trees, covering street and hut with their friendly shade. It is in the cool of the early morning that the greater part of the business of the village is transacted. Most of the women repair soon after 6 to their plantations, where they work until noon, a few of them remaining in the village to attend to culinary and other domestic matters. Large earthen pots containing fish, banana, or manioc are boiling over wood fires, around which cluster the young boys and girls and the few old men and women enjoying the heat until the warm rays of the morning sun appear. Meanwhile, the fishermen gather up their traps, arm themselves, and paddle off to their fishing grounds. The hunters take their spears or bows and arrows and start off to pick up tracks of their game. The village blacksmith starts his fire. The adze of the carpenter is heard busily at work. Fishing and game nets are unrolled and damages examined, and the medicine man is busy gesticulating with his charms. As the sun rises, the scene becomes more and more animated. The warmth of the fire is discarded, and every department of industry becomes full of life, the whole scene rendered cheerful by the happy faces and merry laughter of the little ones as they scamper here and there engaged in their games. At noon, the overpowering heat of the tropical sun compels a cessation of work, and a lazy quietude prevails everywhere. Then all the shady nooks of the village are filled with groups who either sleep, engage in conversation, or pass their time in hairdressing or in attending to some other toilet matter which native etiquette demands, such as shaving off eyebrows or pulling out eyelashes, an operation which is also extended to all hairs on the face except those on the chin, which are pleated in the form of a rat's tail. The closer the fingernails are cut, the more fashionable it is thought. At the finger ends, the nails are cut down to the quick, and anyone posing as either beau or belle always has some of the finger and toenails pared entirely off. The midday meal is now eaten, the whole village assuming an air of calmness, broken only by the occasional bursts of boisterous mirth from groups engaged in discussing the merits of the native wine. All mankind have the same weakness in requiring at times drinks stronger than water. Nature has provided the African with the juice of the palm tree, a most palatable beverage, resembling when fresh a very strong lemon soda, but intoxicating in its effects. It is obtained in the following way. The villagers in charge of this particular industry climb the tree, trim away some of the leaves, and then bore 3 or 4 holes about half an inch in diameter at the base of the frond to the heart of the tree. From each of these holes will flow each day about half a pint of juice, a small gourd being first placed to receive it. The contents of these gourds are collected every morning. This beverage is called by the natives malafu, and is well known to all European travelers as palm wine. Between 3 and 4 o'clock, the village again resumes its era of activity, which is kept up until sundown. In this region, being close to the equator, the sun sets at 6 o'clock. All tools are put away and work is suspended. The fires are again lighted and mats are brought out and spread about, and the principal meal of the day is eaten, after which the natives gather around the fire again and talk over the events of the day and the plans for the future. The young people repair to the open places and indulge in their native dances until midnight. This dancing at night is a sight to be remembered. The performers arrange themselves in circles and dance in time to the beating of the drums, which is their only accompaniment, and occasionally break out into native songs. The surrounding tropical scenery stands outlined in bold relief, the nearer trees occasionally catching the lurid light of the fires, which also strikes on the gleaming bodies of the dancers, making a violent contrast of light and shade, the whole scene being rendered impressive by the wild but harmonious music. At midnight, when all the villagers are retired to their huts, stillness reigns, broken only at times by the weird call of a strange bird, the cry of a prowling leopard, or some other wild animal, and the varied sounds of tropical insects. The effect of slavery. This is a fair picture of the life carried on from day to day in 100 Congo villages, and but for the existence of slavery, it would continue undeserved until 1 year's end to another. It is the presence of the slave in the village that brutalizes the otherwise harmless and peaceful community. It is the baneful influence that gives one man the power of life and death over the wretch he has purchased that impels the savage instinct to spill in executions and ceremonies the lifeblood of the man, woman, or child he has obtained, perhaps in exchange for a few brass rods or 2 or 3 yards of Manchester cloth. Here at Lukalila, for instance, I had hardly settled down in my encampment when I was introduced to one of those horrible scenes of bloodshed which take place frequently in all the villages along the Congo, and which will be enacted so long as the life of a slave is counted as naught, and the spilling of his blood as of little account as that of a goat or a fowl. In this particular instance, the mother of a child having died, it was decided, as usual, to celebrate the event with an execution. At the earliest streak of dawn, the slow, measured beat of a big drum announces to all what is to take place, and warns the poor slave who is to be the victim that his end is nigh. It is very evident that something unusual is about to happen, and that the day is to be given up to some ceremony. The natives gather in groups and begin studiously to arrange their toilets, don their gayest loincloths, and ornament their legs and arms with bright metal bangles, all the time indulging in wild gesticulations and savage laughter as they discuss the coming event. Having taken a hasty meal, they produce from their houses all available musical instruments. The drums are wildly beaten as groups of men, women, and children form themselves in circles and excitedly perform dances consisting of violent contortions of the limbs, accompanied with savage singing and with repeated blasts of the war horns, each dancer trying to outdo his fellow in violence of movements and strength of lung. About noon, from sheer exhaustion combined with the heat of the sun, they are compelled to cease, when large jars of palm wine are produced and a general bout of intoxication begins, increasing their excitement and showing up their savage nature in striking colors. The poor slave, who all this time has been living in the corner of some hut, shackled hand and foot and closely watched, suffering the agony and suspense which this wild tumult suggests to him, is now carried to some prominent part of the village, there to be surrounded and to receive the jeers and scoffs of the drunken mob of savages. The executioner's assistants, having selected a suitable place for the ceremony, procure a block of wood about a foot square. The slave is then placed on this in a sitting posture. His legs are stretched out straight in front of him. The body is strapped to a stake reaching up the back to the shoulders. On each side, stakes are placed under the armpits as props to which the arms are firmly bound. Other lashings are made to posts driven into the ground near the ankles and knees. A pole is now planted about 10 feet in front of the victim, from the top of which is suspended by a number of strings a bamboo ring. The pole is bent over like a fishing rod, and the ring is fastened around the slave's neck, which is kept rigid and stiff by the tension. During this preparation, the dances are resumed, now rendered savage and brutal in the extreme by the drunken condition of the people. One group of dancers surround the victim and indulge in drunken mimicry of the contortions of face which the pain caused by this cruel torture forces him to show. But he has no sympathy to expect from this merciless horde. Presently in the distance approaches a company of 2 lines of young people, each holding a stem of the palm tree, so that an arch is formed between them, under which the executioner is escorted. The whole procession moves with a slow but dancing gait. Upon arriving near the doomed slave, all dancing, singing, and drumming cease, and the drunken mob take their places to witness the last act of the drama. An unearthly silence succeeds. The executioner wears a cap composed of black cock's feathers. His face and neck are blackened with charcoal, except the eyes, the lids of which are painted with white chalk. The hands and arms to the elbow and feet and legs to the knee are also blackened. His legs are adorned profusely with broad metal anklets, and around his waist are strung wildcat skins. As he performs a wild dance around his victim, every now and then making a feint with his knife, a murmur of admiration arises from the assembled crowd. He then approaches and makes a thin chalk mark on the neck of the fated man. After 2 or 3 passes of his knife, to get the right swing, he delivers the fatal blow, and with one stroke of his keen-edged weapon severs the head from the body. The sight of blood brings to a climax the frenzy of the natives. Some of them savagely puncture the quivering trunk with their spears. Others hack at it with their knives, while the remainder engage in a ghastly struggle for the possession of the head, which has been jerked into the air by the released tension of the sapling. As each man obtains the trophy and is pursued by the drunken rabble, the hideous tumult becomes deafening. They smear one another's faces with blood, and fights always spring up as a result when knives and spears are freely used. The reason for their anxiety to possess the head is this: the man who can retain that head against all comers until sundown will receive a present for his bravery from the headman of the village. It is by such means that they test the brave of the village, and they will say with admiration, speaking of a local hero, "He is a brave man. He has retained 2 heads until sundown." When the taste for blood has been to a certain extent satisfied, they again resume their singing and dancing while another victim is prepared, when the same ghastly exhibition is repeated. Sometimes as many as 20 slaves will be slaughtered in one day. The dancing and general drunken uproar is continued until midnight, when once more absolute silence ensues, in utter contrast to the hideous tumult of the day. I had frequently heard the natives boast of the skill of their executioners, but I doubted their ability to decapitate a man with one blow of the soft metal knives they use. I imagined they would be compelled to hack the head from the body. When I witnessed this sickening spectacle, I was alone, unarmed, and absolutely powerless to interfere. But the mute agony of this poor black martyr, who was to die for no crime but simply because he was a slave, whose every piteous movement was mocked by frenzied savages, and whose every death throes gave the signal for the unrestrained outburst of a hideous carnival of drunken savagery, appealed so strongly to my sense of duty that I decided upon preventing by force any repetition of this scene. I made my resolution known to an assembly of the principal chiefs, and although several attempts were made, no actual executions took place during the remainder of my stay in this district. A few words are necessary to define the position of the village chiefs as the most important factors in African savage life, especially as in one way or another they are intimately connected with the worst features of the slave system and are responsible for nearly all the atrocities practiced on the slave. The so-called chiefs are the head men of a village, and they rank according to the number of their warriors. The title of chieftain is not hereditary, but is gained by one member of a tribe, proving his superiority to his fellows. The most influential chief in a village has necessarily the greatest number of fighting men, and these are principally slaves, as the allegiance of a free man can never be depended upon. A chief's idea of wealth is slaves. Any kinds of money he may have, he will convert into slaves upon the first opportunity. Polygamy is general throughout Central Africa, and a chief buys as many female slaves as he can afford, and will also marry free women, which is, after all, only another form of purchase. Modes of torture. All tribes I have known have an idea of immortality. They believe that death leads but to another life, to be continued under the same conditions as the life they are now leading, and a chief thinks that if when he enters into this new existence he is accompanied by a sufficient following of slaves, he will be entitled to the same rank in the next world as he holds in this. From this belief emanates one of the most barbarous customs, the ceremony of human sacrifice upon the death of any one of importance. Upon the decease of a chief, a certain number of his slaves are selected to be sacrificed, that their spirits may accompany him to the next world. Should this chief possess 30 men and 20 women, 7 or 8 of the former and 6 or 7 of the latter will suffer death. The men are decapitated and the women are strangled. When a woman is to be sacrificed, she is adorned with bright metal bangles, her toilet is carefully attended to, her hair is neatly pleated, and bright-colored cloths are wrapped around her. Her hands are then pinioned behind, and her neck is passed through a noose of cord. The long end of the cord is led over the branch of the nearest tree and is drawn taut at a given signal. And while the body is swinging in mid-air, its convulsive movements are imitated with savage gusto by the spectators. It often happens that a little child also becomes a victim to this horrible ceremony by being placed in the grave alive as a pillow for the dead chief. These executions are still perpetrated in all the villages of the Upper Congo. But the life of the slave is not only forfeited at the death of the chief of the tribe in which fate has cast his lot. Let us suppose that the tribe he is owned by has been maintaining an internecine warfare with another tribe in the same district. For some reason it is deemed politic by the chief to bring the feud to an end, and a meeting is arranged with his rival. At the conclusion of the interview, in order that the treaty of peace may be solemnly ratified, blood must be spilled. A slave is therefore selected, and the mode of torture preceding his death will vary in different districts. In the Ubangi River district, the slave is suspended head downwards from the branch of a tree, and there left to die. But even more horrible is the fate of such a one at Shumbiri, Bolobo, or the large villages around Irubu, where the expiatory victim is actually buried alive with only the head left above the ground. All his bones have first been crushed or broken, and in speechless agony he waits for death. He is usually thus buried at the junction of two highways, or by the side of some well-trodden pathway leading from the village, and of all the numerous villagers who pass to and fro, not one, even if he felt a momentary pang of pity, would dare either to alleviate or to end his misery, for this is forbidden under the severest penalties. How the natives are enslaved. The varying fortunes of tribal warfare furnish the markets with slaves whose cicatrization marks show them to be members of widely differing families and distant villages. But there are some tribes, and these the most inoffensive and the most peaceful, whose weakness places them at all times at the mercy of their more powerful neighbors. Without exceptions, the most persecuted race in the dominions of the Congo Free State are the Bololo tribes, inhabiting the country through which the Malinga, Lupuri, Lulunga, and Ikalimba rivers flow. I may here mention that the prefix ba in the language of these people implies the plural. For instance, Lolo would mean one Lolo, Balolo signifying Lolo people. These people are naturally mild and inoffensive. Their small, unprotected villages are constantly attacked by the powerful roving tribes of the Lufimbi and Ngombe. These two tribes are voracious cannibals. They surround the Lolo villages at night, and at the first signs of dawn, pounce down upon the unsuspecting Bololo, killing all the men who resist and catching all the rest. They then select the stronger portion of their captives and shackle them hand and foot to prevent their escape. The remainder they kill, distributing the flesh among themselves. As a rule, after such a raid, they form a small encampment. They light their fires, seize all the bananas in the village, and gorge upon the human flesh. They then march over to one of the numerous slave markets on the river, where they exchange the captives with the slave traders of the Lulunga River for beads, cloth, brass wire, and other trinkets. The slave traders pack the slaves into their canoes and take them down to the villages on the Lulunga River, where the more important markets are held. Masankusu, situated at the junction of the Lupuri and Malinga tributaries, is by far the most important slave trading center. The people of Masankusu buy their slaves from the Lufimbi and Ngombe raiders and sell them to the Lulunga natives and traders from downriver. The slaves are exhibited for sale at Masankusu in long sheds, or rather under simple grass roofs supported on bare poles. It is heartrending to see the inmates of one of these slave sheds. They are huddled together like so many animals. In the slave shed. The accompanying pictures from sketches which I took at Masankusu will give some idea of the suffering which is endured by captives in numberless slave markets. They are hobbled with roughly hewn logs which chafe their limbs to open sores. Sometimes a whole tree presses its weight on their bodies, while their necks are pinned into the natural prong formed by its branching limbs. Others sit from day to day with their legs and arms maintained in a fixed position by rudely constructed stocks, and each slave is secured to the roof post by a cord knotted to a cane ring, which either encircles his neck or is intertwined with his woolly hair. Many die of pure starvation, as the owners give them barely enough food to exist upon, and even that they grudge them. These hungry creatures form indeed a truly pitiable sight. After suffering this captivity for a short time, they become mere skeletons. All ages of both sexes are to be seen, mothers with their babies, young men and women, boys and girls, and even babies who cannot yet walk, and whose mothers have died of starvation or perhaps been killed by the Lefembi. One seldom sees either old men or old women. They are all killed in the raids, their marketable value being very small. No trouble is taken with them. Witnessing groups of these poor, helpless wretches with their emaciated forms and sunken eyes, their faces a very picture of sadness, it is not difficult to perceive the intense grief that they are inwardly suffering. But they know too well it is of no use to appeal for sympathy to their merciless masters, who have been accustomed from childhood to witness acts of cruelty and brutality, so that to satisfy their insatiable greed they will commit themselves or permit to be committed any atrocity, however great. Even the pitiable sight of one of these slave sheds does not half represent the misery caused by this traffic. Homes broken up, mothers separated from their babies, husbands from wives, and brothers from sisters. When last at Masankusu, I saw a slave woman who had with her one child, whose starved little body she was clutching to her shrunken breast. I was attracted by her sad face, which betokened great suffering. I asked her the cause of it, and she told me in a low, sobbing voice the following tale. I was living with my husband and 3 children in an inland village a few miles from here. My husband was a hunter. 10 days ago, the Lefembi attacked our settlement. My husband defended himself, but was overpowered and speared to death with several of the other villagers. I was brought here with my 3 children, 2 of whom have already been purchased by the traders. I shall never see them any more. Perhaps they will kill them on the death of some chief, or perhaps kill them for food. My remaining child, you see, is ill, dying from starvation. They give us nothing to eat. I expect even this one will be taken from me today, as the chief, fearing lest it should die and become a total loss, has offered it for a very small price. As for myself, said she, they will sell me to one of the neighboring tribes to toil in the plantations, and when I become old and unfit for work, I shall be killed. There were certainly 500 slaves exposed for sale in this one village alone. Large canoes were constantly arriving from downriver with merchandise of all kinds with which they purchased these slaves. A large trade is carried on between the Ubangi and Lulungu rivers. The people inhabiting the mouth of the Ubangi buy the Bololo slaves at Masankusu and the other markets. They then take them up the Ubangi River and exchange them with the natives there for ivory. These natives buy their slaves solely for food. Having purchased slaves, they feed them on ripe bananas, fish, and oil, and when they get them into good condition, they kill them. Hundreds of the Bololo slaves are taken into the river and disposed of in this way each month. A great many other slaves are sold to the large villages on the Congo to supply victims for the execution ceremonies. Much life is lost in the capturing of slaves, and during their captivity many succumb to starvation. Of the remainder, numbers are sold to become victims to cannibalism and human sacrifice ceremonies. There are few indeed who are allowed to live and prosper. Okay, here I am again. Its phone number is 501-437-2963. The mailing address is P.O. Box 95, Alpena, Arkansas 72611. And for $10, you get your information packet consisting of a shoestring entrepreneur, the U.S. militia, and your choice of either root rot, from which I just finished reading, and the fuel book. Of course, the fuel book will be printed in Survivor Volume 5, so if you don't get it, then you can get it later on. So, and just in case you've wandered on here, the frequency is 5.810 megahertz. And what on earth? No calls? Did everybody go to sleep? I thought that was a pretty interesting read there. It was a little long, of course, but I got sort of angry a few days ago because I was recording a thing on literature from Discovery. That's a TV channel, in case you didn't know. And they were doing a thing on literature, as I said. And they brought up Roots, and they were showing Roots as a fine book, something that everybody should read, and something that was very informative and socially useful. Yet these people must have realized that Haley had to pay Corlander $500,000 because Haley had stolen most of the material from his book, The African, which of course proves that Roots is a lie, it's a fraud. And this is just the way that the media, even the so-called non-commercial media, is putting out nonsense to make blacks feel that they have been abused, whereas if you listen to what I just said, you can only realize that the blacks were actually rescued from Africa, regardless of what happened to some of them. Well, I'm still waiting for a call, and the phone number is 501-437-2963. The mailing address is P.O. Box 95, Alpena, Arkansas, 72611. Here's a call. Hello, thanks for calling.
Well, hey, Kurt, catch on. We're really enjoying listening to you tonight.
Well, that was a little long.
Well, it was, but I'll tell you what, I enjoyed that immensely. That's fantastic.
Well, wait till you hear the next part.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'm like, well,
it won't be quite so long.
Oh, that would be quite fine. It's like commercial break time. I'm waiting for the part.
Well, can you imagine anybody else but me reading that on a public media?
In reality, not a soul. And the folks, folks like myself need to remember that you're paying for this.
Yes.
This isn't sponsored by some bread manufacturer or somebody pushing cereal.
No, I don't have any backers.
And we greatly appreciate you being there, Guy.
I appreciate it. Well, I just want everybody to get root rot, and the people who ordered the packet without root rot, they can get it for $5 on their next order. But it's something that everybody should have and read. It's very heavily illustrated. It's a fun book. A lot of great drawings in there from the 19th century.
I'd heard you mention this book a number of times, and I'm finding out that, by you reading it, that it's written much deeper than I had expected.
Yes, it's not at all propaganda. Like I said, it was written in the last century, many different writers.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Everybody else that's listening, I'd like to remind them, I enjoyed your packet a great deal. I purchased your Corona grain mill. It was an extremely fair price. As a home brewer,
yeah,
those mills go for quite a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So your services are fantastic, sir.
Yes, well, I appreciate that.
Well, I wish you well this evening. I'll be listening.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, bye-bye. Okay, again, the phone number is 501-437-2963. The mailing address for the $10 information packet is P.O. Box 95, Alpena, Arkansas, 72611. And for your $10, you get a fantastic U.S. militia, shoestring entrepreneur, and a copy of Root Rot or the Fuel Book. Hello, Kurt Saxon here.
Hi, Kurt. How you doing?
Doing fine.
Hey, everybody knows that last caller was Carrie, you faggot.
Carrie? Who's Carrie? Oh, no, Carrie is my engineer. He's right here. He couldn't call. Paul? What'd you do, leave me? Well, now here, Paul is mad now because, see, he said he didn't want me to send him root rot even if I sent it to him free. Now, he's up on his high horse, and I hope he'll call again. Hello, Kurt here.
Hi, Kurt. This is Lamar Jean calling from downtown Michigan. You ever thought of being a guest lecturer at some of our universities? I think we could use them up here in Michigan. We have things called, the college students are required now to take classes like ethnic awareness, which actually just separates the species from the subspecies and so forth more than is necessary. In other words, instead of being an American, we are now considered Afro-Americans or whatever, Mexican Americans, Honduras Americans, Chinese Americans, and so forth.
Well, I'm a Euro-American then.
A Euro-American?
A Euro-American.
Well, I know, but you're still an American, and that's what I consider people should be. You have a job, you do the job you're supposed to do, you're an American, you're not...
I'm a hillbilly.
Well, that's all right, too, but I mean, still you're an American.
Yeah.
But they have this ethnic awareness classes that these college students, we're paying for in their tuition, or they're paying for, the students.
Mm-hmm.
They have to take to be aware of the various other ethnic cultures that are making up our society.
Yeah.
And actually all it's doing is just freeing and separating everybody. And I think that maybe you should go on some college tours and this. I really enjoyed the speech, this talk you gave tonight, this reading. And maybe read this to some of these different college classes. I think it might be quite beneficial for culture as a whole.
I would rather send it to Louis Farrakhan and have him read it.
Well, yeah, you think...
I wonder if he would. The thing is, I like Louis. He's... yeah,
he's got it together. Yeah, he makes a lot of good points. I have to agree with this.
But I wonder, would he be man enough to read something like the slave trade in the Congo Basin.
Well, why don't you send it to him?
I don't have his address.
Well, I'd probably just send it to Louis.
Maybe somebody knows and can send my address.
He's out of New York, isn't he?
His address. I'm not quite sure.
In New York or Philadelphia? I think it's New York. Yeah, I think I just sent Louis Farrakhan, New York.
But on the news, the Dan Rather news a few nights ago, which I recorded.
You really watch that?
Yes, I do. Listen, I watch everything. I'm a journalist. It's my job to watch everything. I want to keep in touch with what people are saying, regardless of whether they believe it or not. I can figure out, I can read between the lines.
Yes, that's fine, but...
Never hide yourself from what people are saying, because if people are lying, you'd better know it.
Well, it's true. It's true, but everything he says, I just can't believe that guy. Ever since I saw what he did in Nam, from then on, he has...
I don't know, what did he do in Nam?
Oh, well, like most of the journalists did in Nam, they overblew everything.
Oh, you mean Dan Rather?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about Louis Farrakhan.
Oh, no. Dan Rather, I'm talking about the major news media boys.
Well, look, the guy gets about $25,000, $30,000 a week. You've got to be more of a man than Dan Rather to turn something like that down.
Well, it's true. That's true. But
that's the problem with our country. We don't have any men anymore. We got people who have a dollar sign after their name.
Well, I have to agree with you there. There's Jeff Cooper from Gunsight. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
Oh, yes.
Well, he wrote in some of his short stories, he interviewed some World War II war heroes.
Yeah.
One of the short articles is called The Survivor, about a German soldier that was captured by the Russians and taken back to a gulag thousands of miles from Germany.
Yeah.
And of the thousands of German troops that were captive, they were all going to die. And he says of those of 1,000 men, how many men do you think would really fight? They were going to die anyway, but I mean really fight. And he said out of 1,000 he could find 3.
Yeah.
I mean, would actually really fight. And he ended up actually very interesting story. He ended up escaping and then following railroad tracks back east, going west, and got a gun and he killed one Russian soldier, and then he would sneak up and wait till the Russian soldiers came out of a little train depot, and he'd kill them and get their food and their guns and their ammunition, and kept on going. He did this for a couple thousand miles to get back into Germany. It's a very, very interesting story.
My kind of man.
Yes, exactly, but I'll get off here, let other people on, but I'm just saying, I just don't think that the American male now, frankly, I hate to say it, has enough balls to fight anymore.
Well, the IQ is dropping many points every generation.
Exactly. Now, I'm not talking about our military personnel. I'm talking about the civilians that are probably going to have to save this country if it boils down to it.
Well, I don't think they can save it. I think it's every man for himself.
Well, yes, but I mean, after the fall and so forth, I mean, there's still going to have to be some tough boys someplace for the species to survive.
There are, yes, and they all subscribe to U.S. militia.
Well, I certainly hope so. Kurt, great program tonight. I'll let you go. Thanks very much.
Okay, bye for now.
No.
Okay, again, the phone number is 501-437-2963. The mailing address is P.O. Box 95, Alpena, Arkansas. And if you send your $10 for the information packet, then you get a $5 refund on a subscription to either U.S. Militia or Shoestring Entrepreneur. Hello, Kurt here.
Kurt.
Yes.
This is Jess from Minnesota.
Yes, Jess.
I really enjoyed your program this evening, but there's one thing I'd kind of like to bring out by inference.
Yes?
The person didn't really get in on the show like I did a few minutes late.
Mm-hmm.
The person might gather or deduct from that this type of activity is peculiar only to the African continent. But, you know, the work of Joseph Campbell that I've studied seems to indicate that human immolation in this fashion, more or less, has gone on in every conceivable continent and regional area in the world.
Oh, it certainly has. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to infer anything otherwise.
Well, and that's why I wanted to point out that I...
Well, you see, the article was written it was published in 1890.
Sure.
And it was written, he was telling of his experience in Africa in 1883.
Uh-huh.
And it's part of Root Rot, which explains to everybody that the blacks were rescued from Africa. I mean, no American slave could have had it worse than had he stayed back in Africa as a slave.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
But what we hear in the media now, and especially with black activists screaming and yelling, even talking about reparations, for pity's sake.
Yeah.
They should worship the slavers. Of course they won't, but at least they should stop bitching about their poor ancestors who were taken away from some kind of paradise, and that the media should stop promoting the mini-series Roots as true, even after it's been exposed as a lie. I mean, Alex Haley wouldn't have paid Corlander $500,000 if he hadn't taken most of the material from Roots, from the African. So the book was a lie. Roots was a lie and a fraud, and Haley was a plagiarist, and yet the media and the black studies groups and black activists put this over as something to condemn the white race for what was done to their ancestors, even though the root rot proves that their ancestors were actually rescued.
Yeah, well, I can see where there's a certain amount of validity in what you're saying and logic. I'm not arguing that point at all. I mean, I just wanted to make sure and very carefully point out that some person might come along and say, well, this is the only place this happened, you know.
Well, no, it happens all over the world.
It's a ubiquitous thing, you know.
Yes, well, Saddam Hussein is a good example. And it's still happening in Africa. It's happening in Israel. It's happening all over the world.
Well,
and it's happening more and more and more as people become more primitive.
It's a little bit more legal, I suppose.
Yes, so well, it was legal in Africa. This guy was talking about everything they did was legal.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking of nowadays we have contracts drawn up in different, you know, it's a little bit more sophisticated.
Yes.
However, your point is well taken. In those days, the way things were done, the protocol was a little, you know, essentially right for that time.
Yes.
I have time for one more little question.
Okay, sure.
Or statement, I mean. Actually, it's a question. You know, Joseph Campbell...
refresh me.
In Joseph Campbell?
I don't know Joseph Campbell. I'm sorry.
Oh, I thought you... I'm almost certain I heard you quote him here a while back.
John Campbell.
Oh, John. I'm sorry. Is it John Campbell?
John Campbell was the he was the editor of Analog Science Fiction, and he was a writer and a brilliant man. And he wrote The Barbarian Menace, and I wrote The Answer, The Citizen Menace.
Oh no, I think we're on two different tracks.
Well, I'm sure we are, but
apparently so. Well, anyhow, Joseph Campbell was an anthropologist.
Yes.
And he studied mythology, you know, for
years.
Well, anyway, it seems that there's quite a lot of evidence to point out that exists that the Neanderthal man and prehistoric Homo sapiens worshipped the bear.
Yes.
And that went on for quite a long time, right up until, well, in fact, I think some places in Japan, northern Hokkaido, and
the Ainu.
Yeah, the Ainu, and up there.
They worship bears.
Yeah, and the Chukchi up there, you know.
Yes.
I think they still worship the bear somewhat.
Well, I don't see why they shouldn't.
Well, no, I don't have any problem with that. But here's my question. I think by looking at this situation, I feel that the birth of Christ was an anachronism in that Jesus Christ was born too late. Now, what's all these Neanderthal men and all these Homo sapiens that were born pre-Christian era? Are they all going to go to hell because they didn't have the gospel of Jesus Christ? And these poor guys were worshiping these bears, and they did religiously?
Well, you sort of caught me up on that. I suppose they would be burning in hell now.
That's what I was afraid of.
Yes, I'm sorry about that, because
I am too, because that's really too bad. Because I think the Neanderthal and the prehistoric Homo sapiens, which probably should be changed to Homo dementis. Actually.
There you go.
Anyway, I do feel sorry for those guys, because just think of all those poor Neanderthals and prehistoric men, prehistoric Homo sapiens are just down the tubes.
Well, so many of them died from the cold, I think they'd welcome the change.
Well, down where it's warmer.
Yes.
Okay, Kurt.
Okay, buddy, I'll talk to you again.
Thanks a million. Really enjoy your program.
Glad to.
Okay, yeah.
Bye-bye. Okay, phone number is 501-437-2963. Hello, Kurt here.
Kurt, I appreciate your show.
Why, thank you.
I hope my radio isn't up too loud to mess with you.
That's all right.
A gentleman called in earlier talking about Americans and talking about hyphenated Americans and
yes.
Afro-Americans and European Americans. And
well, that's a new thing they've come up with. I think it's silly.
Well, I think that you're either an American or you're not an American. I think an American is someone who will obey our laws and live under our culture and speak our language and respect other people's rights. I don't think an American is somebody who wants to impose their culture or their values from where they came from on the country that they've moved to.
Yeah.
If a person comes from another country and expects everything to be in his language, he ought to go back where he came from.
But he comes here for the gold.
Well, he comes here for the free handouts because we have a welfare magnet.
Yeah. Well, that won't last long.
And nationalists are very patriotic. And we have a saying, no kings, no queens. This is America.
Yeah.
And America doesn't have a king on a throne. It doesn't have a master race that has special privileges. Everyone is a citizen, and we all have the responsibilities of citizenship, but no one is a king and no one is a privileged class.
Well, that's what they say, but actually we do have a great privileged class here. They're called welfare recipients and federal retirees and politicians and rich people too, Kerry says.
Well, these people are not Americans because our Constitution, which you're not an American unless your loyalty is to our Constitution. Our Constitution says that there is no equal protection under the law. If you get special privileges, money stolen from some other working person and given to you, or if you're covered under some protection, such as the hate crimes laws, which give one group of people more protection under the laws than the rest of the law-abiding citizens have, then if you accept these laws or these special privileges for homosexuals, for instance, if you accept this or expect this, then you're not an American.
Well, and I'm an American. See?
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I think that you're a very fine example of an American.
Well, I think you should subscribe to U.S. Militia.
I beg your pardon?
You should subscribe to U.S. Militia.
I should, and I think I plan to.
Issue 4.
Also, I wanted to say that there's going to be May 7th in Boston a pro-American nationalist parade.
Yeah.
Where the nationalist movement is going to stand up for America, stand up for America for Americans, to protest the fact that they were not able to have their St. Patrick's parade.
Yes.
And that we want to invite anyone that may be in that part of the country to come out and stand up for America, stand up for no kings, no queens.
Well, it's the queens we got to get rid of.
We don't need it. This is America, and America wasn't built for a king. It's not owned by a king or a queen. If we wanted a king over us, we wouldn't have had our revolution.
Yeah.
And we don't need a government that's going to impose a king or a bunch of queens over our American way.
Well, now, you're a right-thinking man, and so I think that a subscription to U.S. Militia would delight your heart, especially since you'd get 4 issues to start with.
Well, I think you're right. Again, it's May 7th in Boston. And anyone wants any information, they can write P.O. Box 2000 in Learned, Mississippi. That's Learned.
P.O. Box 2000, Learned, Mississippi.
Yes,
What's
that's
the zip
nationalist
code?
movement.
Okay, what is the zip code?
I don't have it, but it'll get to Learned if you send it to P.O. Box 2000.
Yes, well...
Small town like Alpena.
Yeah. Well, okay, I guess so. But anyway, anybody wanting to write, I guess they can, when they take it to the post office, they got a zip code book there. Look it up. And if you want to call back again and to tell it, in the meantime, get the zip code. We like that.
if I can get through to you again, you're a very popular man. You've got a real hot show, and it's kind of difficult to get through to you.
Well, I'm sorry about that, and also I'm glad.
Well, I'm glad.
But anyway, best of luck on your demonstration there.
Well, that's not my demonstration. It's your demonstration. It's all your listeners' demonstrations that love America and love our Constitution and love our American heritage.
Okay, I'll go with that.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Bye-bye. Okay, the phone number is 501-437-2963. The mailing address is P.O. Box 95, Alpena, Arkansas, 72611. Hello, Kurt here.
Yeah, I believe you said in the Survivor Volume 4 that they had about making bows and arrows.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's in the Poor Man's James Bond Volume 3.
Jeez, Poppins, Poor Man's James Bond Volume 3.
Yeah.
You always mention your information packet, but what I was getting at is I need things on bows and arrows, and that's what I was interested in.
Well, that's well, there's some bows and arrows in various. Well, what you ought to do is buy a set of both the Survivors and the Poor Man's James Bond. They're like encyclopedias of all kinds of great stuff to do.
You don't often give the price of those.
Well, you get all of that information with the information packet, but say all you wanted was Volume 3 of the Poor Man's James Bond. That would cost, and you weren't a subscriber. See, if you were a subscriber, it'd be $16.20. But since you're not a subscriber, it'd be $18 plus $4 postage and handling, and the books weigh 2.5 pounds apiece. See, they're large books, well over 400 pages on bond paper, and but I just keep plugging the information packet because then it gives you a wider frame of reference on what I sell. It describes all my books and tapes, and you start out then with a good bunch of stuff that'll make you very happy for several days while you're waiting for the books.
Yeah, I'm sure that it probably would, but mostly, I had specific interest is what I'm saying, but I'm sure that...
Well, see, if you get the information packet, you read the descriptions of the books, and it tells everything that's in them. That way you can be more specific.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
That way you don't need to order everything, although I urge people to order everything, because as things get worse, if you're the only person in your community who has a set of the Survivors, for instance, then you are going to be the top man.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Talking about slavery, everyone's been a slave to everyone except, guess who? The Eskimos. They wasn't a darn thing up there anybody wanted till here lately.
No, the Eskimos didn't practice slavery.
No, I said every race has been a slave to every other race at one time in history.
Yeah.
The Eskimos, and the reason for that was that until lately there wasn't anything up there that anybody wanted.
That's right, but
Yes,
well, I've got a book on white slavery.
Oh yeah,
my ancestor was a slave.
Oh yeah, I don't doubt it. When they brought them to Rome, they said they were angles, and they said, oh, it must be an angel instead of an angle, but whatever. Yeah.
Well, however, but slavery has been practiced by just about every culture.
Everyone has been a slave.
And you see,
except the Eskimos, as far as I know, until here lately. And I don't think we made them. Well, in a way, we did. But
it's only the American blacks who are complaining about it. Why don't they just drop it?
Well, retribution. Not retribution. What do they call it? Well, no one alive today has been a slave, or no one alive today has owned a slave.
No.
Well, so...
And my ancestors didn't own any slave.
Here in Georgia, they're arguing over the Confederate flag on the Georgia state flag. Well, the regular American flag, the fleur-de-lis, and all these flags flew over slavery. Well,
yes.
I'd argue about that.
Sure.
But drop it. That's the best thing. Move on.
Move on. Get a life.
That's right. Get a life. Exactly right. Well, listen... I might just get the information packet and then I can see exactly what I want. But you say Poor Man's James Bond 3.
Yes.
It's $18 plus $4 for shipping.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, buddy. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Okay, the phone number is 501-437-2963. And if you like these tapes, they're $25 for a week's shows, postpaid, or $6 each. send to Jeffries Audio, P.O. Box 326, Alpena, Arkansas 72611. Hello, Kurt here.
Yes, Kurt, this is Rennie, the electronic guy.
Good.
I'd like to say something about that one gentleman that called in, talking about the German soldier.
Yeah.
How he fought his way all the way back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, we used to be quite a fighting country ourselves.
Yeah.
Women took over and started wanting a more sensitive and nice person.
Yeah.
Thing. And that's all you ever hear now is, you know, violence is bad. You shouldn't ever think about settling anything with violence, and you know that when you get right down to it, there's some things that's the only way it can be settled.
That's right. Well, I'll quote Rush Limbaugh because he's got a very good line. He says, what a soldier is for is to kill people and break things.
That's right.
And when you start being nice, you stop being a soldier. And look what happened in Somalia. Our soldiers were so nice that a whole bunch of them got slaughtered and drugged through the streets. And now they pull them out, and the poor the poor UN suckers are getting shot all over the place there. You just hear little bits about it, but the UN will probably pull out. And from the last I heard on the news media, the clans are starting to fight among themselves again. So that was a waste of time because the soldiers were nice. You can't have any. You talk about a nice soldier, and you're not talking about a soldier. Soldiers are not paid to be nice. They're paid to be mean. And if you want to administrate, then you have civilians administrating. But you don't. When a soldier tries to be Mr. Nice Guy, the people he's being Mr. Nice Guy to are going to shoot him in the back. And that's dumb.
That's right. And the youth today, except for the ones growing up in the ghetto who had to fight, the rest of the youth in this country are useless.
That's right.
Some of these young kids now, they don't know anything about our history. They don't care about this country. All they want is fun and money.
They want baggy pants and turned around hats and rock and roll and dope and sex. They have sex like dogs in an alley, and they have no morals, they have no ambition, no motivation, and they have very little intelligence. As I keep saying, the IQ is dropping every generation. And you ever talk to a modern teenager? You know, they can't even speak English. I mean, a bunch of stupid punks.
Yes.
And they're ugly looking too. That they dress funny.
Well, the dress doesn't bother me any because I guess every generation, the young people grew up. They want to look different from the other generation. I know I probably dressed funny to my parents or grandparents.
Well, I know, but maybe it wasn't too deliberate. But I bet you didn't spend as much money on clothes as they do today, and sloppy, stupid-looking clothes at that. Okay, it's about time for me to get off.
Okay, real good.
Okay, bye for now. Now it's sign-off time. I'll talk to you tomorrow. So this is Kurt Saxon saying goodbye and be good.